But have you ever looked at your schedule and been completely overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do? Yeah, I've been there too. Just cramming everything in, saying yes to everything, and not having any white space in between the different activities that you're doing because you're being proficient with your time, supposedly, and you're, counting everything down to the last second. And you just feel like there's just never enough time to breathe. And I realized that constant busyness was like stealing my joy. It was making me stressed and anxious, and everyone was always throwing, wrenches into my plans and making me late constantly to everything that I had to go to. And I think that was when I decided to start creating white space or buffer zones in my schedule so that I am not overwhelmed and stressed. I have time to breathe. I have time to just be, and it has saved my sanity. So that's what I want to talk to you more about today. And if you're new here, I'm Suan, and this is Cozy Notes, a space where I share about slowing down, making intentional choices, and rediscovering joy in our lives. I'm so happy you're here. Grab a cuppa and let's dive in. So I think this is really pertinent. Is that the right term? I don't know. This really applies to the conversation that's going on over on my Instagram, which is about white space. And I'm recording this video when this is happening, but you're going to be watching it way after the conversation. But basically, I made a post about, what was the post about? I don't even know. Oh, it was just like a simple Instagram post, like one of the single ones. And I like a checklist, like if you're not doing this, then don't worry about doing this other stuff. So basically it's like making time for yourself, creating white space, being grounded, stuff like that. But what really caught people's attention was the white space. And I feel like a lot of people don't have that white space because we're trained to be really efficient with our time. I meant efficient earlier, not proficient. Really efficient with our time. And we think by planning everything out to the minute is going to make our lives easier. But instead, it makes our lives a lot more stressful. And that's because we're not giving time for the other things that happen in life, which is all the time. The other things that happen in life, like your child wanting to show you their comic book. And it takes, 20 minutes to read because it's like a 15-page comic book that he created. Or we forget that usually our kids, especially our little ones, always have to go poop at the most inconvenient time, usually right before you have to leave to go somewhere. And so when we give ourselves those buffer time, it really helps out. So I guess what we want to talk about is two things, the buffer time and the white space, because I feel like they're two different things. And so I'm going to be changing my notes in my head. So another thing why we overschedule ourselves, besides trying to be as efficient as possible with our time, is our fear of missing out. We don't want to miss out on the things, so that we say yes to pretty much everything, even though we just don't have the time or space to do it. Okay, it was last night, and I was talking about white space and buffer zones on Instagram, and I had overbooked myself. I had a lot going on with my kids' homeschooling stuff, a lot of the classes that they had. And then I had a client call. And then I had an orientation meeting because I went back to dancing hula. And I ended up missing the orientation because I had a client call with a client who wants to work on having more white space in her life because she's late to everything and it stresses her out and she feels bad, like she's disappointing other people. So the meeting ended up lasting longer, and I didn't give myself enough buffer time in between the meeting because life happens, right? And getting to the hula orientation. So I ended up missing the hula orientation. I feel bad about it, but also I should know better. I wasn't following my own advice, and it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes we're going to forget to add those little buffer zones between our events so that we aren't stressed out or late or miss something entirely. And then I think our fear of missing out also lends to our fear of saying no. We don't want to disappoint people. We as women, for whatever reason, we feel that we need to make other people happy. We need to, it's part of nurturing, I guess. We just want to make people happy and comfortable. And sometimes you just have to say no. Sometimes you can't be there for your friend's party. You can't be there for your niece's birthday because you already had plans or something. You can't always be saying yes to everyone. I mean, other people say no all the time. So why do you have to say yes to everything? And then if everything is important and you want to say yes to everything, then nothing is important because you're not giving the time and the energy to what's important. You're just like spreading yourself thin. And so, yeah, that's another reason why we tend to overfill our schedules. So I think right now what we're talking about is buffer time. And then we're going to move over to white space. So I think the benefits of decluttering our schedule is to have more mental space. If we're just doing too much, there's just a lot of stuff in our brains that we have to account for. And, there's the act of actually doing the thing, but then there's also the act of preparing to do the thing. And if you have kids and you're just like trying to get everyone together and everyone ready and making sure, everyone's got their whatever they need, it takes effort to do that too. So you have to factor that into your schedule. And then you want the buffer time in between activities because something is going to happen because it always does. And we don't do that. But when we do that, it just gives us so much clarity, especially when we can figure out what to eliminate from our schedules so that we have more time to do all the things. And I get it. Maybe you have kids. Like for me, having kids, they are the reason why I don't have as much white space as I would like, because I homeschool my kids. We homeschool throughout the day, and then they have classes, and I have 3 kids. So there's like sometimes 3 different classes that they're going to, and I have to drive them from place to place. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And I have to remind myself that it's okay if we don't do all the things. My kids are going to thank me later in life that I don't pack their schedules with activities to do. And also, they don't have to do all the things. I don't want them to develop FOMO, you know what I mean, where they have to do everything that they have their sights on, because it's just not reasonable, because we don't have enough time to do it. And then economical, like we don't have enough money to be able to do all the things that they want to do, because everything is really expensive right now, if you haven't noticed. So simplifying your schedules, leave more mental space and clarity in our brains. It improves our well-being, so because we're not anxious and stressed, and we know how much stress affects our bodies and how, we just want less of that. And it gives us more time to rest in between activities, where we're just not going. And we have time to rest and to recuperate so that we can be more present at the next activity that you may be doing or going to. And it also helps you have a deeper connection with the people in your lives. When we spread ourselves too thin, we don't have time to make those deep connections. But when we have less on our plate, then we have more time for the people in our lives, whether it's a friend that we're visiting, or if it's your hula orientation that you're going to, or it's your family that you're doing something with. Like, not worrying about getting or doing the next thing allows you to be more present, at that moment with your family, with your friends, with your partner, with your boss, with whoever. Some practical tips to help you declutter your schedule and create buffer zones is to identify what truly matters. Not everything on our calendar we have to do. You have to cut back somehow. Like, I have 3 kids. And so I try to streamline our calendar as best as I can with 3 kids and homeschooling them. So they all do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the same studio. Unfortunately, one of them goes on different days than the other 2 just because of the age groups. And then all 3 of my kids take an art class together. When we go to the park to meet friends, all my kids go with us. I do have an older son who takes another art class, and we drop him off at the art class, and then I take the other 2 to a park, or we do some sort of activity, depends. And he also takes a guitar class in the mornings, which I bring the other 2 along, and we homeschool while he's at guitar. So I try to make the most of our time, but also not stress out about trying to get my kids to do all the different things that they could be doing, because there's a lot more. Oh, and then my daughter takes horseback riding classes with a homeschool group, and I take her to that, and that's like 3 hours long. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing, but we're not doing as much as we could. Like my kids don't do a lot. Like I'm not worried that they're going to be missing out. Like they could be doing chess. They could be taking a science class. They could be taking a literature class. There's a lot of other things that they could be doing as well with other homeschool friends, but they're not, because I chose not, even though we have the time in our schedule, it would be just too back to back and packed. And it would leave me stressed and exhausted, and would leave, I think, my kids as well. They wouldn't have time to like decompress. And that's something that I think is necessary for us to do, which we'll talk about soon when we talk about white space. And then next is to like evaluate your current commitments and to think about, do they add value to your life? Is it something that you deem important? Because remember, if everything's important, nothing's important. So you really have to think about what is really important. What do you really value in your life? And then from there, kind of figure out all your actions. Do they align with your values? Oftentimes they don't, especially if we're doing things for other people. They don't. Well, like, yes, it's good to be helpful, but at the same time, it's not good to be helpful at your own expense when it's something that you don't value. It's something that someone else values, and you're just doing it to help them out, to be a good friend or be a good person. So evaluate your current commitments, see what you can slash and take out. Don't stress out about disappointing others. They will find someone else to help them if they really needed the help. Remember, there's 8 billion people in this world. And then I think that kind of leads into practicing how to say no gracefully. Getting back to them, I need to check my calendar, or I don't think that will fit in my calendar at this time. There's various ways that you can say no, and maybe just practice one. Practice one until you get good at it. And then learn a new way to say no, so that you have like a variety of ways to politely say no to people. I've been doing that a lot, and it feels good. When I first started doing it, it didn't feel good. I felt guilty. I felt that guilt. But eventually, I was having this conversation with a friend, eventually you kind of get over that hump. So you can't almost have to fake it to make it kind of mentality where like, what kind of person you want to be. But in the beginning, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Your like nervous system isn't going to be very happy with you, but eventually you get over the hump, and then it's smooth sailing and it feels good, and you're doing the right thing, but you just have to remind your nervous system that you got this, that they're okay. There's no lions attacking. And then also don't forget to complete the stress cycle, that fight or flight. So we have to complete the stress cycle. Oftentimes we have like these stressors and anxieties, but we don't actually fight or flight because it's not necessary to fight or flight. And I think that's why exercise and movement is so good in completing the stress cycle. So different activities that you can do that simulate fight or flight, and you kind of get the picture. And then also it's like thinking about how long something takes if you have to get there, adding in drive time, and then adding in preparation time. Those are the things that we often forget. And so I like to do at least 30 minutes to 1 hour in between different activities that we have to do. I think that helps me a lot to not feel stressed. But like I said, yesterday on Wednesday, it felt a little stressful because we had a park day, and then we went straight to a art class from there. And then we went to get ice cream. And then from there, we left the ice cream shop, dropped off our friend, and then went straight to my other son's art class. And then we went to the park. And so even though when we went to the park, I had those 2 hours to kind of decompress while my other two played, it was just kind of like that back to back doing all those things. But then again, is reminding myself that it's just one day in my life. It's not every day. It's not an everyday occurrence, because if it was an everyday occurrence where my schedule was packed like that, back to back activities with very little white space, or buffer zones, then it would be stressful. But since it's just one day, and when my kids are in their art class, I get time to do my own thing, and then ice cream, and then leave, and then chill out, read while my other kids are playing. So I do have white space, but I don't have buffer zones. That's what I'm trying to say. And I would like more buffer zones, but it just didn't work out. But again, it's one day, so I can handle that. But if every day of my life was like that, and it was in the past, then I would be stressed and late to everything. And I was stressed and late to everything. So, and I don't want that for you. So buffer zone. buffer zones. They make life so much better. Eliminating and creating buffer zones. That's my advice for you. So now let's talk about white space. White space is about creating space in your life that's just for you, where you can just be, whether that is, just sitting down with a cup of coffee or tea and just be, just enjoy your drink, like not listening to anything, not watching, maybe watching birds, but like not watching TV or YouTube or TikToks or whatever you're into. It's just being. And I feel like we don't do that often enough. And like I said, on Instagram, I was talking to my followers about white space, and everyone's like, yeah, I have white space. But I'm thinking, yeah, you have white space, but what are you doing during that time? Are you on your phone scrolling? Because that's not white space, because that's just consuming other, that's just noise. Consuming noise is what you're doing. That's not white space. White space is sitting back and just being, or maybe creating, but it's not consuming. So it's like blocking out time for rest or for hobbies. I mean, that's making a comeback, which I love. I love seeing all these young people into crocheting and needle pointing and all that stuff. It's so awesome. I love seeing that. And so I'm all here for the grandma activities, the grandma hobbies. So bring all those back. Like my daughter, like she's totally into crocheting and knitting. And so I have to kind of refresh my skills on it because it's been a while. But making time for hobbies and for relaxation, like, maybe relaxation is watching a movie or watching your favorite show or reading a book. But I feel like for a lot of us, we're just on our phones, just scrolling, consuming, mindless consuming. It's just noise. It's noise that's really affecting us. And if you say, yes, you do have white space, but you're on your phone, you don't really have white space, in my opinion. I don't think that's white space at all. For me, white space is the absence of having to do something, having to have to do something. It's another thing to be able to sit with your thoughts. Like, I think that's what it is. Like, we are not sitting with our thoughts. We are numbing ourselves so that we don't have to sit with our thoughts. I think that may be it. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Which kind of leads me to, like, how often do you go sit down to watch a movie with your family? And then you pull your phone out and you're scrolling the whole time during the movie. You're not really paying attention to either. How many times does that happen? So I think, limit multitasking is part of white space as well, where you're not doing more than one thing at a time. I mean, I love multitasking. I watch TV while I fold laundry because I hate folding laundry. And if I watch TV, I'll end up folding my laundry. If I'm doing dishes, I will listen to a podcast because that helps me do the dishes because I don't like doing dishes or cleaning for that fact. So if I listen to something, it'll help me do the thing that I don't want to do. So multitasking, totally fine when necessary. But for white space, we don't want to multitask because that's not creating white space. White space is the absence. It's the absence of doing stuff. But, it just doesn't end with decluttering your time. You also need to declutter your mind as well because you're still worried about all the things, right? So you're not creating that white space because you're still stressed and worried and, feeling guilty, etc. So part of decluttering the mind is being more mindful, like being mindfully aware, being present in the moment and not thinking of the next thing that you have to do, which I know is hard to do. But it will benefit you in the long term if you are focused on the present right here and right now, especially if you have kids. Focus on them because they're going to grow up and they're going to leave the house. And then also letting go of those mental shoulds, those things where you feel like you should do, releasing that unnecessary expectation or guilt about things you feel like you should be doing, which I understand. We all have that. Like, oh, I should be using my time more wisely. It's okay to rest. You don't have to pack every single moment being productive. We're trying to get away from that. Just throwing out the shoulds and the guilt that's wrapped around it and being okay with life not being perfect and not going according to plan and being okay not being productive 100% of the time because you cannot be productive 100% of the time. That's just unreasonable. You're not a computer. Remember that. You are not a computer. And the next is to write down mental clutter, which I love to do. I try to do this every day. And sometimes I forget. And I notice that when I do forget to do it, this overwhelm kind of builds up. And it's a little bit harder for me to sleep at night or to stay asleep at night. But when I do this activity, which is basically, if you're familiar with the artist's way, it's morning pages. I don't do them in the morning all the time. I do them when I can. But it's basically stream of conscious journaling. And you just write whatever is in your brain. It could be a list. It could just whatever is cluttering your mind. Just write it down. It can make no sense. It can be jumping from here and there because you have a bunch of things that you're juggling in your head. But just getting it all out helps so much to declutter your brain, and then also processing as well. And then next, in decluttering our schedules and making more white space, is to make time for what things that really matter, because we don't do that often enough, I don't think. And I know for me, my health matters because I am an older mom. I need to take good care of myself so that I can live a long life for my kids. And part of that is exercise. And I do get my walks in, I do get my hikes in, but I do not get my weightlifting in. I was doing really well. And then November happened, Thanksgiving happened, and now it's mid-January. And so it's been 2 months. I haven't really lifted any weights in 2 months. I do have like a weighted vest that I sometimes wear, but it's not enough. And I know that. And so I need to make time. I need to schedule that in. Just as I schedule in the appointments I have with my clients, I schedule in my hula class, I schedule in my kids' classes as well. So why am I not scheduling in my own workouts? I need to do that. So prioritizing those meaningful activities and finding space and time to actually do it is so important. Next is to create rituals or routines. I have different rituals for different mornings because different mornings call for different rituals depending on how early I have to wake up. I don't always have to wake up early, which is nice. I'm very fortunate for that. But for the days when I do have to wake up early, my morning rituals are short. There's not as many things that I do, and I don't have as much time to do them. And that's okay. So I kind of have like a minimum ritual and then like a maximum ritual. And then even then it changes because I get bored very easily and I need to have variety. So I kind of have like a menu of things that I can do if I wanted to. I think having those rituals and routines brings calm in the morning. So you're not just like waking up, hurry up, getting ready, finding your keys, packing your lunch really quick, blah, blah, just trying to get out of the house, because that's how I used to be when I was a teacher. Like it was like a mad dash waking up. Luckily, I only lived like 10 minutes from the school I worked at, but literally waking up like anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour before I had to be at work. And it was just a mad dash to get ready and to leave the house and arriving just before the bell rang. And then teaching right away. Luckily, I had that 10-minute commute where I can gather my thoughts. And that also I would prepare at the end of the day. But still, that was just like a very hectic and stressful way to live. And I don't ever want to go back to that. So creating rituals and routines that bring calm in your life is really key. And that even in the evenings to help you wind down, especially if you have a hard time falling asleep, having these wind down rituals really helps you. And when I say wind down, I don't mean wine down. I know for myself and for a lot of my friends, we all enjoy a glass of wine, we all enjoy a cocktail, but our sleep isn't as good as if we just sleep naturally, relax naturally. It's chillier now since it's winter. And so usually at night I have a cup of herbal tea, but during warmer months, I'll make myself a mocktail, which I find really relaxing to drink, and skincare routine, getting into my PJs, prepping my bed to be all cozy and comfy, maybe reading or coloring before bed, something to relax me. I try to turn off the TV. Doesn't always work because my husband likes the TV on when he falls asleep, but I do not. I prefer a podcast, and then I just put a sleep timer on it so I don't miss out on the things because I always fall asleep. I used to do audiobooks too, but I would fall asleep all the time. And then I would hate having to try to find where I left off. Like it took a lot of time to do that. So I no longer listen to audiobooks before bed. Making time to spend with your loved ones is also really important. And oftentimes it's hard to do that with your partner, especially, you're working You're busy, spending time with the kids, doing all the things. And then finally you have some quiet time with the two of you and you just put on TV and watch that together. But you're not really talking. And I think that's more important. We need to have more conversations. And I know that's something that I am working on. Just got to get my husband on board too. So when we declutter our schedules and declutter our minds, our life starts to feel less stressful and easier. And that's what we all want, right? We want life to be easy. And we often make our lives harder. So with fewer commitments and less mental clutter, we feel more at ease, and we also feel more in control. Rather than trying to control every minute of our lives, giving us more white space actually gives us control, and we feel less out of control, even though we're trying to control. It also enhances our focus and productivity, because you can't be productive without rest. You can't focus for a long time if you don't have rest. Whenever you start feeling that frustration, that irritation, that's the sign. That's your mind sign saying, hey, you need to rest. You probably should have rested like 10, 20 minutes ago, but you need to rest. So a simpler schedule allows us to be more efficient. Isn't that what we're looking for? Efficiency. And we have clearer intention. We know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then most importantly, it increases joy and fulfillment in your life when you have more white space. We want to have joy. It's not just be productive and be busy and accomplish. We need joy. We need joy in our life. We need time to breathe. We need time to do things that fulfill us. And I think that is something that we don't do enough, especially here in America. I feel like in Europe, they do it. But here in America, we think that we have to live a tough life, that we have to make things more challenging than they need to be in order to feel like you're doing it right. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just from like our old pioneering days or something. I don't know, but we're not pioneers anymore. We live a very comfortable life, and we should enjoy it. We should appreciate the life that we have here and enjoy our families, enjoy the earth that we live in, enjoy our homes, enjoy the activities that bring us delight. We need more joy in life and fulfillment by doing these hobbies that, fulfill us, by spending time with the family that fulfill us. Yeah, we just are bringing more joy and delight into our life. And that is wonderful. So this week, my challenge for you is to look at your schedule, see where you're spending your time, and see what you can cut out. And just take things one step at a time. Like, don't completely overhaul your schedule overnight, because that's going to be stressful and you're going to have those shoulds and doubts and guilt. Let's ease into it. We don't have to do things in a rush. Let's ease into it and slowly eliminate things from our calendar and start implementing more white space and buffer time and fulfilling activities in our lives. So I hope you found value in this video or podcast, or wherever you're watching this or listening to this. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, do all the things to make the algorithms happy, because, they're the ones that control the world right now.